Okay, let's walk through step by step creating a Bloomfield block. So the first thing you're going to do is cut out 3 pieces, one each for A, B, and C, and then when we sew them, we'll sew in that order. So we'll sew A to B, and then the combined A to B unit to C. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my A piece and fold it wrong sides together along this diagonal. So you're taking the 2 straight edges and pressing them together. All you need to do is make a little finger crease right here at the curved side. There are, on the paper templates and the plastic templates, there are markings to show you where this crease should be. And that is also the place where you'll put your center pin. So you can mark those on your fabric ahead of time. I just tend to do it once I've cut the fabric out, because once you get the hang of it, again, it's just the straight, 2 straight edges, not the curve, coming together. So fold it, and then finger press. That gives me my little marking. And then, so we've got the convex curve with the crease facing up, and then we're going to take the concave curve and do a similar thing, folding this straight edge over to this straight edge. Give it a little press. Then I'm just going to put my C piece aside for now. Then you take your 2 pieces, line up the crease, and then with the A piece on the bottom, right side facing up, put in 1 center pin. I'm going to show you my pinning strategy that I use. Gently bend this long straight edge over to the side, line up these 2 straight edges. Then I just kind of go along this kind of straight run here towards the end of it without pulling or stretching too much, and place another pin there. Then I'm going to go to the opposite side, line up these 2 straight edges. Then add pins in the middle of each of the remaining curved areas. It's kind of personal preference how much you pin when you're sewing curves. It can take a little trial and error. I try not to overpin. I find I get somewhat better results that way. So just judiciously pinning. Try to like press your fabric so that it forms this kind of like nice natural curve, one piece against the other, and then place another pin somewhere in the center. And that's your AB piece. Now I'm going to go sew that unit. So with my needle down and my 1/4 inch patchwork foot, I'm going to just gently guide the pin block through the sewing machine. Personal preference again, but I'm going to leave my pins in. I don't always do that, but I find it helps with curve blocks to kind of maintain the natural curve without creating any bumps and jags. Once you've sewn your A, B pieces together, you'll press the block to the petal side. So pressing towards the curve, you can see here on the back, I've pressed the seam allowance towards the curved petal. Once you've pressed the block, this is really important, before you add your C piece, we're going to trim this block. So the way to do this is take your clear ruler, and on the short side, line up 1/4 inch from the bottom of this edge where the A and B pieces meet. In addition, you need to make sure that there's a 90-degree angle between this side of the curve and this side of the curve. So I keep my 1/4 inch marking here. I'm going to slide this up just a little so I can see this line, keeping this aligned with this, and then you can see this line up here lines up with this. It doesn't need to line up with the entirety of this line and this curve, as long as it's like a couple of inches along the starting point from the edge towards the middle. Just this part needs to be lined up. You might find on some blocks it doesn't go all the way. That's fine, as long as you have a 1/4 inch here, and this lines up here. This will be your first cut. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that 1/4 inch allowance on this side of the block. Next, I'm going to flip it and do the same thing over here. I'm going to turn my ruler so that I have a long edge along this entire side, and then line this up at the bottom so that I have a 1/4 inch here, from here to here, and then a 1/4 inch along at least part of this side. So 1/4 inch down here, 1/4 inch over here. Then I'm going to cut. At this point, you might be tempted to square up the whole block and make sure it's 6.5 inches, but don't do that. Just concentrate on these two sides for now. The next thing we'll do is pin our C piece to the AB unit, and we'll use a similar strategy as we used for the other part, only this time the smaller piece is going to be on the bottom, so it will be like this. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to take the concave piece, fold this straight edge to this straight edge with the curve in the middle, make a little crease where the two pieces meet. I might have said convex, I mean concave. And then I'm going to take the convex piece, C piece. I'm probably mixing those up, but you can see what I'm doing. Finger crease there, then nest those two creases against one another. When we sew, again, we're going to have the outer curve piece on the bottom of our sewing machine. So I'm actually going to pull this up a little and put my pin on the other side, because this is going to be the top piece that comes through my sewing machine. So taking this edge, gently bending it over to the edge of the B piece. Here's a trick: if you aren't comfortable pinning on the other side, you can pin on the top first, then flip it over, insert a second pin like so. Take the first pin out, and then we'll do the same over here. Here I'm just going to go directly into what will be the top where we're sewing. And then again, comfort level for how many pins you put in. I just put one in the middle of each. So gently fold that. Press the curved pieces, align them with one another, and add your pin. Kind of try and create that gentle nesting curve. For me personally, this smaller curve is the more challenging one to sew. The larger curve seems to kind of just go like butter. It's quite easy. This one's a little more challenging for me, so I like to just really look at it. See that I've got a nice curve there. And then when I'm sewing, I'm going to go nice and slow, really just letting the machine move the fabric along and just kind of guiding it in place. So now we've sewn our C piece to our AB unit. We've pressed the C piece, that's the center of the flower, away from the larger piece. So this curve gets pressed towards this side, this curve gets pressed towards the middle, and then the last step is to just trim this block up to 6.5 by 6.5 inches. So you can see here I've got a little bit of yellow that's warping out a little bit here. I'm just going to trim that off and then flip this over. You can use a combination of your clear ruler plus your cutting mat, if you have one with ruled markings, to make sure you're getting that square 6.5 inch piece. So I'm just going to measure this with the mat underneath it. Squinch this down a little bit. Trim this to 6.5. Trim this side as well, just so it's a nice clean edge. Then we have our subunit ready to be joined up with the other units to turn into a flower. A couple of tips when you do that: it's okay if your blocks are, you know, 1 millimeter or 2 off in size. All you need to do when you pin them together is prioritize 2 things. That's these 2 edges lining up with the adjacent flowers. So you want your center curves to line up as best they can wherever possible. And then when you're pinning the sides, as well as sewing them, you want to pin along the side and sew down this pre-sewn line as close as possible as you can, so that this will kind of disappear into the quilt, this little piece here and this little piece here. And then you'll have your finished flower units. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.